Hey, what's happening? It's Patrick Lovell, Truth Bomb, riffing on June 14th, which is a Wednesday at 1 p.m. my time. And I want to approach this as sort of a catch all, if I will, if I can, to try to break through this incredible amalgamation, this wall, this tidal wave, this brutal, you know, fire hose of misinformation and confusion and insanity amidst what it is that I have been revealing to you for over a year and a half on Patrick Lovell Truth Bombs the Con on YouTube and TikTok, as well as, of course, all of our work in The Con at www.thecon.tv, as well as a podcast that is available for free on YouTube. Just search for The New Untouchables, brought to you by Real Progressives. Between those and other elements that I have on my YouTube page, if you go to video and you click down and you see Deception Owns You, there's an 11-hour filibuster that lays out, quite frankly, in a Mr. Smith sort of goes to, the Capitol motif that I laid out 11 hours of detail of the largest criminal conspiracy and cover up in history that never ended. But trying to get 11 hours in front of a population that has a 47-second bandwidth is next to impossible. And yet at the same time, we're surrounded by this overwhelming confusion and misinformation of everything that prevents you from understanding what it is that I'm telling you. So first, please like and subscribe. Please share these truth bombs. And most importantly, please join me, grab my hand, you plus me equals we the people, in a tidal wave populist crusade to purge corruption. Who am I? I am a muckraking journalist, a television producer, as well as a investigative journalist. And I have got literally the Raiders of the Lost Ark answers to what has got this country by the balls. And it's not rocket science, it's racketeering. And you see these thumbprints everywhere, all over the massive failure of mainstream media that is spending wall to wall information and bandwidth and atmosphere to all things Donald J. Trump. Much of which is important, but is ridiculous, considering that Donald J. Trump should have been out of business, bankrupt, in prison, and possibly gone long before he ever became the president of the United States. And everything that we see on display, whether it's through the special counsel Jack Smith, which is so unbelievably easy to understand if you read the indictment with the 37 charges against Donald Trump for mishandling top secret information by his own words and admission in interviews, that if you understand the statute and what they're charging him with, he has already pled guilty. There is no defense for what he is offering. He's offering admission to what they did based on what the statutes read, what the law reads of what he's guilty of. And what we see is a circus of 24/7 of people's eyes on this thing that have led to an absolute debauchery of morons coming to the street in Miami, for example. And there's many, many, many other places in the country that this will continue to happen. And I saw, footage from literally African Americans in Miami wearing, blacks for Trump. Who doesn't think they got paid to do that? Who doesn't think that they don't understand what they're doing? I mean, it's just such a revelation, and I don't mean to discount people's ability for, expression and free speech, but are you buying it? I mean, anybody who understands what Donald Trump has done and who he is and is basically, fomenting a white supremacist revolution, and they're going to support that, is just the base layer of ridiculousness. And it's absolutely horrific to see and understand, considering what it is that I have been trying desperately to get the attention of the world, at least a couple 100 million Americans, to understand that Donald Trump is at best a mid-level player in a grand symphony of corruption. And he has been for years. So last night, I'm watching MSNBC, and I have incredible respect for Lawrence O'Donnell and more so for Lawrence Tribe, the Harvard legal professor that lays out the details of so much of what Trump has been involved with that are just undeniable and so easy to comprehend. And yet millions of people discount it because they don't even understand the first sort of element of crime and process and policy and government and the law, because they don't have an education. And unfortunately, in our society, you have to have an education to be an informed citizen. And so what we've had over the course of 240 years, basically is an evolution of, in order to form a more perfect union, to widen the opportunity for everybody to vote in this country while destroying the ability to create critical thought. And so we don't have citizens. We have overwhelmed reactionaries that are basically consumers, I suppose, for those who can consume, and the rest are just expendable. And that's what this system has done, because the system doesn't operate with the integrity of law, where no man is or company is above the law by any stretch. Given everything that we're seeing of Donald Trump, that he's been, free for as long as he have, given what we know about what's happened and the speed in which the courts have not acted until now, they're all coming together at once in a massive crescendo. But at the same time, by doing so, the resources for what it is that I'm revealing to you, which is exponentially larger than Donald Trump. It's like comparing a grain of sand on a beach to the size and the scope of the sun. If you have any capacity for awareness, that's what we're talking about. Meanwhile, that is not to suggest that Donald Trump isn't or shouldn't be accountable for his actions. Of course he should be. But he shouldn't be the entirety of our focus. He almost should be a secondary afterthought instead of the hyper focus of the entirety of government, of the entirety of the population, of the entirety of media, of the entirety of the judicial system. It's ridiculous, all things considered. So Tribe went on to say something that I thought was nuclear in terms of the corollary to what it is you need to understand what I am revealing to you. So he said last night that he is very concerned with the conflicts of interest and the ability of the judge assigned to this case, who has been from the beginning, Miss Cannon, who is exemplified, having been appointed by Donald Trump, that she doesn't have a fair opinion of what she is going to be ruling on, which can create all sorts of problems. And so Lawrence Tribe is saying we have to have transparency. We have to see exactly what's going on in that courtroom to make sure that justice is done. Because legal experts know when she is manipulating and doing things illegally for a specific outcome, which would be corruption. Now, here's the thing. Pull back your lens and your aperture. Pull it back. Go wide. Go wider. Go even wider. And you'll understand, if you understand what I'm trying to reveal to you, is that courtrooms across America have been allowing documentation fabrication and illegal foreclosures for 13 years based on all of the elements we present to you at Nakine and so much more that I present to you in the new Untouchables and everything I've been riffing about in these truth bombs to reveal how the system does what it does, why and how, which to Mr. Tribe's remarkable consideration is to impugn the integrity of the justice system. Because it's corrupt. Because when you know where to look and you understand all of the ingredients of what goes into standing and you understand the elements of what created the racketeering enterprise that is the con, then you understand how the courts railroaded millions of people doing very similar things that are now on display in every single case that Donald Trump is in the midst of. And yet, all we can focus on as a country is a tiny fraction of what is happening in the universe of corruption. Yesterday, I was on a podcast with a fantastic journalist, independent guy who works his ass off to bring all sorts of truths to the American people to elevate things above mainstream media, because mainstream media is a lie. Because it works on eyeballs and ratings, and it hyper focuses on certain things, and it cherry picks, and it creates these audiences to where if it gets 3% of the population, that's great ratings for ad revenue. And we've learned recently that they're lying platforms of deception that we consider integral to getting information. Fox Media, News Corp, just settled for $787 million for partaking and collaborating in a massive lie as it related to the January 20th election and the so-called lie, big lie, which of course I believe is a perverted, inverted sort of scenario where I believe those that are involved with Trump knew everything we were putting out in the con and basically took it, spun it, perverted it into this racket that has everybody in this massive dystopia of insanity where African Americans can boldly proclaim that they're for Trump. What? Then they don't have a fucking clue who Donald Trump is. He's no friend to African Americans, okay? Let alone justice. And then we listen to guys like what? Tucker Carlson? And we pretend that this guy's got some credibility because he's anti-war and he's anti-pharmaceutical and he speaks truth to power because of corporate America doesn't want you to know certain things. And so he's got credibility. No, he doesn't. He's a bloviating entertainment fool that pretzel logics his way for white supremacy, and guys like Russell Brand pick up on it and ultimately use MAGA as clickbait to try to do their own version of whatever that keeps them propped up. Meanwhile, nobody's talking about the actual facts and evidence of truth of corruption, of which apparently everybody's chasing. I've got that in spades, in nuclear freaking proportions. It's called the con. And what I revealed yesterday in this, really important podcast that Egberto put out yesterday is the revelations that everything that I've revealed, which includes, basically a racketeering enterprise to set up tens of millions of people to steal their homes, to steal their pensions, that ultimately blew up the world. All of it was illegal. Tens of millions of felonies at every step of the way that we lay out perfectly in symmetry with the guys from the FBI, the DOJ, and the SEC that were the good guys in this whole thing, most notably by a guy by the name of William K. Black, who put 30,000 criminal referrals together in the SNL crisis in the early 90s, and then 1,000 convictions of white-collar executives that we already knew all of these lessons 30, 40 years ago. And then now it's like he got sidelined. They suppressed the con. I'm screaming on Twitter and YouTube and social media to try to penetrate the bubble. Given the information I have, I should have literally tens of millions of followers. But I appreciate every single one of you. But I think I've got like 500 and something, on YouTube. I don't know, 1,000, 180 something on Twitter, 5,000 plus on Facebook that I haven't touched for several months, 7 million plus on TikTok. Meanwhile, I can't convert all of the people into this tidal wave crusade to purge corruption because I've got the facts that the New York Times, the Washington Post, MSNBC, Fox, CNN, everybody covered up, including the Department of Justice and the FBI and the SEC. And how do I know? Because I made the con. And it's all on display, which leads us to what? That the Federal Reserve used the full faith and credit of the United States illegally to pump tens of trillions of dollars into the bastards that destroyed the world. And we had no prosecutions. Meanwhile, everything that took place in that pipeline is a configuration and a mirror and a reflection and a refraction of everything we're seeing Donald Trump go through. Is this all coincidence? Is it a genius intelligence operation? the term will come to me, the Manchurian candidate sort of thing. I don't know. I think it's just because we're so fucking stupid that we can't see the forest for the trees. So I'm trying to get millions of you to A, understand what I have, B, try to sign a petition to make sure that what we have doesn't go away. Because I just happened to come across this really interesting interview about 2 days ago of a journalist in Guatemala that's trying to, get the world's attention that in Guatemala, journalists are being arrested for telling the truth of a corruption that they're destroying, the truth. And that's presumably in a third world country because they've overrun the courts. They've overrun the legislature. They have complete control of the government. Who's they? The money influences. Whether it's in some sort of drug racketeering or, money laundering or whatever's happening in Guatemala. But the bottom line is, pull the lens back, people. That's what I'm explaining to you. We are a banana republic. Our judiciary is corrupt to the gills, just like Lawrence Tribe is concerned about. And ultimately, nobody in a million years, in a gazillion years, would understand that one guy right here, Patrick Lovell, was able to put together miraculously everything that the federal government that has tens of thousands of employees and in these specific arenas like the FBI, the DOJ, the SEC, and the AGs around the country, as well as, the regulatory bodies, to the tune of $90+ billion a year, didn't achieve. Not to mention the hundreds of billions of dollars that go to media that lie to us. And then, of course, the courts, where judges who they've got assignments for life. They don't need to lie. But then, okay, if you understand the right wing, especially the Koch brothers and, these guys that are into the incredible calculus from, dark money from going back to the, the 50s in the Jim Birch Society, they know how to pull the strings behind the curtain, as does many people in the mob, okay? It's called corruption, and there's even more. But ultimately, what I'm revealing to you is tens of millions of people got set up illegally through tens of millions of fucking felonies that led to the entire global economy crashing, in which the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States, and quite frankly, the central bank of the world, provided $30 trillion of liquidity illegally that, yes, Wall Street paid back because they got quantitative easing and other ways to be able to pay back. And if you understand that you got free money to be able to charge interest to other people, you can pay back things pretty quickly. Yeah, it's a nice racket if you can freaking have control of it, which the corrupt do. We have a corporate fascist state undergirded by a criminal syndicate that uses socialism to fuel the mafiocracy, and now they're fueling fascism. So if you, me, and everybody you see who isn't a Nazi, who believes in liberty and sustainability and integrity and decency come together in unity, then we can defeat the tyranny of misery, because we've got to usher in a new clean deal. You're not going to get, you're not going to get a new paradigm in energy without getting rid of the corruption that's tied to Saudi Arabia and the fossil fuel industry and Wall Street, okay? You're not going to do it. We're not going to be able to, create a paradigm where we're like separation of powers again and everything else until we end dark money. We're not going to have free press and, anything other than propaganda and a confused populace unless the facts can elevate. And I've got the largest story of the last 70 years that's got to penetrate, and billionaires spend billions to corrupt the system so they can grift trillions. So I'm asking you for $13 in respect and honor of the original 13 colonies to allow me the resources to get this truth out there so that we can build the masses. I don't want to get you for $13 a month like a subscription. One day, one contribution, $13. All I'd ask for you is to get 13 other people, and so on and so on and so on. And, eventually, if we got 13 million people, we'd have $169 million, and I'd be able to build a third party based on the exact consensus of the founding fathers, minus slavery and all of the two-thirds citizenry sort of scenario. We were, 240 years later, to be able to incorporate and pursue and form a more perfect union to establish justice and tranquility for ourselves and our posterity, to ordain has established the Constitution of the United States. My God. If you're a patriot, you can't sit on the sidelines and watch these neo-Nazis fucking, protest at Disney World and DeSantis allowing that to happen. Is that free speech? I mean, my God, it's so aggravatingly, mind-numbingly infuriating. I can't even imagine that this is our society, but it is, because corruption births and fuels fascism. So let me just, take one last crack at this if I haven't hit all the right points. So look, we started a campaign about a month ago to generate support to not have the revelation of the largest criminal conspiracy and cover-up in history not be erased from the public square. What I've learned these past 2.5 years is that we are deluged by lies and misinformation in a perverse society that is drowning in its own suffocation of common sense and verifiable truth. Big tech and Wall Street are in complete control because Wall Street controls the federal government and the Federal Reserve, and Wall Street owns media, and the public has little or no capacity for critical thought. Our work is alive for a short time longer. The only legitimate threat to the facade that we are a democracy governed by the law is our work. We're not. We're a corrupt fascist state undergirded by a criminal syndicate. Our work, the con, lays out precisely what that is, and that's why the system, everybody who's behind the curtains and in front of our face, BlackRock and finance and everybody who owns the system and the judiciary and everybody in on it, they can't allow you to know the truth. The problem is a vast majority of us don't want the truth. We live in an era of madness through which the truth has no value and only has an appetite for hyperreaction and lies. The war for the soul of America is nearly lost. I've been force-fed the reality that the American public has no sense of character because accountability for perversion of all that we're supposed to be is non-existent. Liars are more ambitious than integrity. Con artists are more effective than justice. Some may think it cliche to say we're all, what we're all seeing, but so many refuse to accept. We're in the midst of the end times unless somehow the truth gets a toehold and eventually purges the cancer of conformity to corruption. We made the petition available. It's available for the next short little while, and we're trying to get this campaign off the ground. Consider it a presidential campaign, because if we can get tens of millions of people behind the truth, because unfortunately, all of the presidential candidates, at least the ones that are talking about corruption, they don't know the details of what I'm revealing to you, even though I'm trying desperately to get it to them, and maybe I will. And I'm sorry for shouting. God damn, it's desperate times. Failure is not an option. Rise, roar, revolt, onwards and upwards.